Have you ever watched a neighbor turn your peaceful fishing dawn into her personal police state? What if she slapped you with a trespassing complaint for casting a line in water you've known longer than her Botox? And what if the punchline was that every drop she was charging your neighbors $200 a month to access actually belonged to you the whole time? Picture this. Pine Ridge Lake, 2025, America's idea of suburban heaven, until Barbara Barb Kensington rolled in like a corporate storm in Lululemon. I'm Jack Harlan. I buried my wife on the hill behind the cabin I built with my own hands. Every sunrise since, I've been out here at the same spot, line in the water, mist rising like old friends saying hello. The loons, the pine smell, the quiet crunch of gravel under my boots. That wasn't a hobby. That was how I kept breathing after cancer took Sarah at 48. Then Barb showed up in her white Range Rover with the blessed and bougie plate, fresh off a 7-figure divorce settlement. Helmet hair that could survive a hurricane, pastel cardigans that cost more than my truck, and the smile of someone who'd spent 20 years in Atlanta compliance departments turning no into a 4-letter word. Within 2 weeks, she'd called a concerned homeowners meeting, complete with PowerPoint slides titled, Optimizing Community Assets and Mitigating Recreational Liability. I kid you not, actual bullet points about synergistic shoreline stewardship. The original folks, retired teachers, veterans, folks whose lawns had more character than money, sat there blinking while Barb sold them fear wrapped in HOA bylaws. She got 8 signatures, mostly the new McMansion crowd who thought $200 monthly lake membership fees sounded classy. The rest of us received certified letters demanding mandatory enrollment. I called her, polite as my mama taught me. Ma'am, appreciate the enthusiasm, but I'm not joining. Her laugh was pure ice. It's not optional. This affects everyone's investment. I said, lady, I don't have investments. I have a home. Click. 2 weeks later, the lake was ringed with shiny laminated signs. Private HOA property, members only. Plastic smiles gleaming in the sun like cheap dentures. I kept fishing anyway. My church, my last conversation with Sarah every single dawn. Barb stationed herself at her picture window with binoculars like I was a felon instead of a guy trying to catch breakfast. Then came the day she called the sheriff. Deputy Ramirez pulled up looking like he'd rather eat his own badge. Sorry, Jack. Complaint of trespassing on HOA waters. Barb stood on her deck in a pink sweater that probably cost more than my annual property tax, arms crossed, that satisfied little smirk saying she'd just won the lottery and the prize was my humiliation. I packed up without a word. Its closing echoed across the water like a starter pistol. Right then I knew. This woman had just declared war on the wrong fisherman. Next morning she filed formal charges, photos, timestamps, the works. Within 48 hours, she'd called an emergency HOA meeting about non-compliant residents undermining community standards. Her new sidekick was Dale, retired banker with the personality of wet toast, now proudly serving as treasurer. Together, they started mailing violation notices like junk mail from hell. Betty Kowalski's garden gnomes, 50-year-old ceramic family heirlooms from her late husband, were suddenly aesthetic pollutants costing $50 a day until removed. Frank Martinez's old fishing boat was unpermitted recreational equipment. My own dock, built before Barb was even born, got tagged for safety violations. I didn't yell. Facebook. I just smiled, nodded, and started visiting the county courthouse every Tuesday like it was my new fishing spot. Joyce and Land Records, been there since the Carter administration, took one look at Barb's HOA paperwork and cackled. Son, this mess is missing more required documents than a politician's tax returns. No boundary survey, no proper incorporation, no legal authority over water. Then she dropped the bomb. Old 1958 mining company deeds from when the lake was surveyed for copper that never panned out. Turns out my grandfather hadn't just bought lakeside land. He'd bought the lake bottom and all water rights in perpetuity. Mineral rights that, under dusty old law, included surface use for extraction-related activities. Fishing, boating, breathing, turns out those count. While Barb was busy hiring mall cop security and printing more signs, I was quietly mapping every ridiculous escalation. She installed a white vinyl fence across the old walking path elderly neighbors used for doctor-ordered exercise. Frank Martinez showed up one morning for his heart health stroll, and Barb pointed at her shiny new sign like a game show hostess. Times change, mister. Liability management requires structure. Frank just stared. The same man who'd walked that path since 1987, now blocked by plastic and corporate arrogance. That was the moment the neighborhood started whispering. Betty showed up at my cabin that night, hands shaking, holding the gnome fine letter. Jack, they want me to pay or remove memories. I poured her coffee and said the first real sentence in weeks. Barb just picked a fight with the wrong lake. The harassment ramped up like a bad reality show. Noise complaints about my boat motor at dawn. Health department inspections claiming my septic was poisoning community waters. She even tried to get my 23-year-old dock declared illegal. Each time the officials showed up, took one look at the dates on my permits, and left shaking their heads. But Barb doubled down. Attorney who sent a cease and desist demanding $500 in administrative recovery fees. I read it aloud to Betty on the porch, and we both started laughing. The kind of laugh that hurts because it's the only thing keeping you from screaming. See, while she was playing neighborhood dictator, I'd hired surveyor Jake. $300 that paid dividends in pure comedy gold. Jake came back grinning like he'd found pirate treasure. Jack, your lot line runs 30 feet farther into the lake than anyone realized. And those old mineral deeds? They don't just own the bottom, they own the whole damn thing. Every square foot from shore to shore.
I didn't rush. Her big county commissioner presentation. She booked a caterer, invited the newspaper, printed victory party invitations. She even dragged in presidents from 3 neighboring HOAs for a solidarity summit, like she was launching a cult. Her PowerPoint that night was a masterpiece of delusion. Graphs showing declining property values because of unregulated fishing, photos of my tackle box labeled repeated trespassing incidents, and a final slide that read protect our investment from those who resist progress.
The room was packed. Podium in her cream blazer, voice dripping corporate honey. Commissioners, we're not trying to ban recreation. We're simply requesting reasonable standards. She flashed her 47 signatures like they were the Magna Carta. No clear private ownership exists, so the HOA has stepped up as responsible stewards. The silence that followed was delicious. I raised my hand slow and steady. Mr. Harlan, you have the floor. I walked up carrying nothing but a single manila folder and 23 years of Sunrise patience. The room went graveyard quiet. Seat with that same smirk, expecting me to grovel. Instead, I laid the certified 1958 deed on the table, county seal gleaming under the lights. Commissioners, I'd like to correct one small misunderstanding. MS. No clear private ownership exists. Actually, I own the lake. Bottom to surface. My grandfather purchased the full mineral and water rights from Thompson Mining in 1958. Those rights passed to me in 1999, and I've paid the property taxes on the entire lake, every year, while MS. Kensington's HOA has been collecting illegal fees for access to my private property. Barb's face went the color of spoiled milk. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again like a fish that finally realized the hook was in its own mouth. Attorney Bennett, quietly sitting in the middle row, stood and delivered the legal kill shot in calm, devastating English. Every fine, every sign, every fence installed by this unincorporated group has been trespassing on Mr. Harlan's land. Zero legal authority because it was never properly formed. They've been running a 6-month protection racket on private property. The room exploded. Not loud enough for the back row to hear. I'm out. This isn't what I signed up for. Betty started crying happy tears. The newspaper photographer's flash went off like fireworks. Barb grabbed her purse and bolted for the exit, heels clicking a frantic retreat march while the caterer she'd hired for her victory party stood awkwardly in the hallway, holding a tray of uneaten mini quiches. 3 days later, the county ordered every illegal sign, fence, and camera removed within 72 hours. The white vinyl eyesore came down with a satisfying thud that sounded like freedom. Security cameras that had tracked my every cast were ripped out and tossed in a dumpster. The laminated private HOA property signs disappeared faster than Barb's dignity. I woke up the following Monday to the sweetest sound I'd heard in months. Absolute silence. No binoculars. Just loons calling and mist dancing on water that had always been mine. I walked down to the boat launch, cast my line, and for the first time in half a year, the only thing watching me was the sunrise. The HOA dissolved like cheap sugar in hot tea. 3 families quit immediately, quietly peeled the stickers off their mailboxes. Betty threw a neighborhood workday the next Saturday. 23 of us showed up, including a couple who'd originally supported Barb before they saw her true colors. We pulled fence posts, filled holes, and restored the walking path. Someone brought barbecue that tasted like redemption. A new gnome appeared in Betty's garden, a little fisherman holding a rod, courtesy of the neighbors who felt guilty. Barb listed her lakefront mansion 2 weeks later. The for sale sign went up on a Tuesday. She was gone by the following Monday. Sold below market value after 45 days. Turns out harassing an entire community doesn't exactly boost curb appeal. The new owners, the Pattersons, moved in with their kids and fishing rods the very first weekend. I watched those kids laughing on the dock and felt something click back into place. I drew up a simple lake access agreement. No fees, no stupid rules, just respect the hours, don't litter, don't be Barb. I planted a tasteful wooden sign at the launch, Harlan Family Lake, all welcome. Fish responsibly. A few neighbors offered to pay anyway. I turned everyone down. It was about reminding people that some things, peace, community, a quiet dawn, can't be laminated and sold. The story rippled. HOAs in neighboring counties suddenly faced newly educated residents showing up with deed research and quiet smiles. County commissioners tightened HOA formation rules so future Karens would have to actually file paperwork instead of just printing signs. Joyce started running Know Your Deed workshops at the library. 73 people showed up the first night. Attorney Bennett gave free sessions on riparian rights. Betty's gnome collection grew into an annual garden tour called Gnome's Sweet Gnome. We even launched a lake cleanup scholarship in my grandfather's name. Every morning now I fish with a few neighbors who join me in the quiet. We don't talk much. The water that reflects the kind of community Barb could never understand. My back doesn't hurt anymore. Harassment is a hell of a stress tax. So here's the quiet truth nobody puts in HOA newsletters. Bullies like Barb always overplay their hand because they mistake silence for weakness. They think laminated signs and PowerPoints equal power. They never count on the guy who just keeps showing up at the courthouse until the law itself hands him the entire battlefield. In the end, the best revenge isn't loud. It's the soft plop of a lure hitting water that legally belongs to you while the Karen who tried to steal it packs her U-Haul in silence. Know your rights, stay patient, and let the Karens write their own eviction notices. Some fishing holes really do bite back.